Is your car's handling actually that important? And that might seem like a stupid question because I'm sure a lot of you guys who clicked on this video are probably thinking, well duh, of course it matters, that's what makes me enjoy my car. And I totally understand that because a good handling car is some of what makes the best cars that have ever been made when it comes to the enthusiast perspective on driving. Cars that are considered the best driver's cars are rarely a car that is an absolute rocket ship in a straight line and struggles when it comes to the twisties. So having said that, you may be wondering, so why are you even asking this question? Well, there's a lot of factors that make it more or less important to have a car that handles very well, and it varies a lot on who you are as a person, what you enjoy about driving, and very heavily where you live. Obviously you can see that I have a 2011 Ford Mustang GT. It clearly leans more towards the straight line speed than it does towards the handling, and that is very, very clear. And I bring this up and I'd like to get into this topic because I have owned cars before that I owned mostly for the handling side of things. My 350Z is a car that I bought because I wanted a car that was raw and handled well. It was, you know, somewhat quick in a straight line, certainly for the day that it was made. And the car that I owned afterward was a 2008 Subaru WRX, a car that's also not particularly straight in what? Also a car that's not particularly fast in a straight line. I still can't get over what I just said. But is a car that is known to be fun in the corners and is especially fun to drive when it comes to the cornering aspect of things on loose surfaces and stuff like that with the all-wheel drive system. So, as someone that has bought cars because they enjoy handling, why do I now own a Mustang? Well, let's get into that. But before we do, random thing. I've been building this vintage BMX because I had this sitting in my parents' shed for forever, and they're gonna be moving soon, so I needed to get some of my crap from their house. So I had some spare bike parts laying around and putting it together, so I don't know, maybe if you guys are interested in seeing something content-wise on this, then maybe you will in the future. Probably not the topic of the main video, but I'm working on it, you know, it's getting there, and it's pretty cool. It's an old Redline, and yeah, cool bike. So, you know, we'll get back to cars now. So first things first, what do you enjoy about driving? Because handling and a car's just general handling prowess and how it makes you feel as a driver is something that is preached very, very heavily when it comes to car media, basically everywhere. That is primarily the focus when it comes to what we consume media-wise with cars, at least when it comes to magazines and stuff like that. Of course, there's tons of street racing, roll racing, you know, drag racing, basically straight line driving that is mainly focused on power in a lot of ways on YouTube and stuff like that. And that's something that's become much more, I guess, I wouldn't say popular, but it has become much easier for us to consume in recent years in comparison to before magazines and stuff like that. You know, horsepower and straight line speed is certainly a factor, but when it comes to deciphering what is the best car, rarely is straight line speed the main consideration. In most cases, when it comes to like automotive journalism, magazines like Motor Trend and Car and Driver and Road and Track or whatever, it seems more like handling is a primary focus, and a car that also happens to be powerful and fun in a straight line is a secondary benefit. And that general philosophy has really hung on, but like I previously mentioned, is kind of starting to change in recent years with the popularity of drag racing and or street racing. Whether or not I condone that as a good idea, a lot of cases, not really, but regardless, it's media that we consume all the time with, you know, channels like That Racing Channel. We see all sorts of, you know, whatever, 2,000 horsepower GTRs, 1,500 horsepower Supras, I don't know, 7 million horsepower Hellcats, whatever, that it is that we see on videos of like straight line racing a lot. That's something that is all over the place. So has the perception on handling versus speed shifted? Potentially, but is that a good or a bad thing? Well, that entirely depends on you and what you are interested in. That may seem obvious, but let me break it down just a little bit. What is it that you enjoy about driving? Do you enjoy doing straight line pulls and experiencing your car's speed? Or do you enjoy taking it to the ragged edge around a corner, feeling the tires start to lose grip just a little bit and hanging on right on the edge of disaster. Or maybe not quite that extreme, but what is it that really makes you enjoy your car? What are the moments that are most memorable to you? And what cars are it that get you excited? Are you raring to go to buy like a brand new GR86 or a Miata, or on the used side of things, an S2000 or a 370Z or something like that? Or are you excited by the Mustang GTs of the world, or the Challengers, or whatever it may be, even cars like the Supra? Which one of those really appeals to you more? And lastly, and this could potentially be the most important one, where do you live? And this is where I think people go wrong the most often. I live right in the middle of the Midwest. I live in Illinois, and around me, unfortunately, there's not a lot of really great driving roads. There just isn't, and when there is some fun corners, they're very few and far between, and a couple good corners on a road is pretty much all there is, and then it's mostly straight again. Or do you live in like the Appalachian Mountains in like Pennsylvania or something like that, where maybe your hometown is mountainous, or over in Colorado or something like that in the Rockies, lots of mountains and stuff like that, different mountain passes or whatever it may be, just general curvy roads that are carving through canyons, what have you. And the reason why I ask that is because as much as you may want a car that's fast in a straight line, in areas like that, there may not be a lot of points. And as much as you may want a car that handles very, very well in the corners in an area like mine, might not really matter. I've always been one who's leaned more towards the handling side than the straight line speed side when it comes to having fun with cars, but what I've found is that's not something that's typically super easy to do in my area. Sure, I could go on a trip somewhere and take my car and enjoy some nice twisty roads on an adventure, but overall, if I'm gonna be driving this car all the time, does it really make sense to own a car that is super laser focused on something that I can't really do in my area? And I could say the same thing if I did live in one of those more mountainous areas or areas that have more twisty roads in general for whatever reason it may be. Does it make a lot of sense to have a car that has an amount of power that I can't really use very often? Or should I buy a car that as a feature is lighter weight and is something that's more set up to give you a more direct feeling where you can really have a lot more fun around those twisty corners that are just much more common? Well, obviously you see which one I've ended up with. And I will say, I'm not going to pretend that there's not a happy medium a lot of cases with this. You can make a Mustang GT handle just fine. It's just never going to be a Lotus Elise or a Porsche Cayman or something like that. And in the same way, you could make a BRZ or a Lotus Elise or something like that be very fast in a straight line, but it's never going to be as reliable or do it as effortlessly as something like a Mustang GT or a Challenger SRT 392. So what's really most important to you? Ask yourself this question genuinely, weighing not just what you think sounds fun in a car or what you might want or what you think you want in a car, but what you will actually use the car for. And this sort of thinking really applies to a lot of different things when it comes to cars. Obviously, if you're building a car that you're going to drive around as like a daily driver, it doesn't make a lot of sense to put a full roll cage in it with a 6-point harness and no airbags and stuff like that. And in the same way, if you're going to have a car that you buy specifically to track competitively, it doesn't make a lot of sense to buy something that's heavy and has a lot of luxury and safety features as a starting point, and leaving those things. The basic point of this being, don't get infatuated with one particular car. Genuinely consider how you are going to use this car and if it makes sense for you to buy a car based off of those things. Because after a lot of consideration and maybe being able to take a ride with or do a test drive in a friend's car or at a dealership from a lot of different vehicles, you may realize that what you actually will use and get more joy out of is not what you expected. So is handling really that important? It could be, but it's not necessarily the only thing that matters. And in your case, it might be the thing that matters the least. You could say the same thing about power, but the ultimate moral of the story here is only you can decide what is best for you when it comes to what kind of vehicle you want to own, what sort of vehicle you're going to put your time and money into. So make sure to weigh your decisions carefully and make the best decision for you. think with your head, not just with your heart. Your heart will follow later on. So if you guys did enjoy this video and you enjoyed what I had to explain about handling versus power or whatever, please consider subscribing to the channel. We have a lot of different videos. You'll see 2 of them being suggested to you shortly, and I appreciate each and every one of you guys for watching once again, and I will see you guys in the next one.